You know, it's pretty incredible when you stop to think about it. That biological network inside you that controls, well, everything you think, feel, and do. From a tiny little thought to something huge like running a marathon, it's all managed by this system of just staggering complexity. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and unlock the secrets of your body's command and control system, the neural network.
Okay, so where do we even begin with something so complex, right? Well, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the big picture, looking at your body's two main networks. Then we'll zoom way, way down to the tiny messengers called neurons. We'll figure out how they send a signal, and then zoom right back out to map the whole system. And of course, its command center, the brain. All right, let's kick things off. Just imagine for a second that you start exercising. Instantly, your muscles are demanding more energy, right? So what happens? Your heart starts pumping faster, you breathe quicker, and blood gets rerouted to where it's needed most. All of these different parts of your body have to work together perfectly, in sync. And that amazing synchronized teamwork, that's what we call coordination. So what coordination really is at its heart is the process that keeps your body in balance, in that state of homeostasis. It's all about how the different parts of you interact and, complement each other's jobs, making sure everything runs like a well-oiled machine. Now, to pull off this amazing coordination, your body basically has two main communication systems. First, there's the endocrine system. That one uses hormones. Think of it like snail mail, sending slower, widespread chemical messages. But then you have the neural system, and that's our star today. This is the body's high-speed fiber optic internet. We're talking instant point-to-point connections that are absolutely essential for any kind of rapid control. So, if the neural system is the high-speed internet, what are the wires? Well, let's zoom in and look at the fundamental unit of this whole network. We are, of course, talking about the star of the show, the neuron. Yeah, these neurons are really the heroes of our story today. They're these highly specialized cells, and they're designed to do three things, and do them incredibly well: detect, receive, and transmit all kinds of information. They're the messengers, they're the wiring, they're the processors, all of it rolled into one tiny microscopic package. So let's break down its basic anatomy. You've got the dendrites, which act like these little antennas, constantly listening for signals coming in. Those signals then get processed in the cell body, that's the control center, and once a decision is made, the message gets fired down the axon. Think of the axon as a long transmission cable carrying that message all the way to its destination. Okay, so we know its parts, but how does this tiny messenger actually send a signal? This is where it gets really cool. It's not just a simple wire, it's this amazing electrochemical process. Let's break it down. All right, first things first. A neuron that's just hanging out, at rest, is kind of like a tiny charged up battery. There's this really clever mechanism called the sodium-potassium pump that's constantly working to keep a negative charge on the inside and a positive charge on the outside. We call this the resting potential. The neuron is polarized, just humming with potential energy, waiting for something to happen. And it's this state of constant readiness that lets our whole system react in just milliseconds. So here's the crucial part. When a stimulus finally arrives, bam, it's like flipping a switch. These tiny gates on the membrane fly open, and positive sodium ions just rush inside. This instantly flips the charge in that one spot. That's a process called depolarization. And that creates this electrical wave, the action potential, that zips down the axon like a line of falling dominoes. And right behind it, repolarization happens, resetting everything for the next signal. Okay, that electrical wave is fantastic for sending a message down the length of one neuron. But here's the catch. Neurons don't actually touch each other. There's this tiny, tiny gap between them. So how on earth does the message jump across that gap to the next neuron in line? Well, that critical junction point has a name. It's called a synapse. It's basically the space where the end of one neuron's axon gets super, super close to the next neuron's dendrite. And that little microscopic fluid-filled gap right in between them, that's the synaptic cleft. Now, it turns out there are two ways to get across this gap. You have electrical synapses, which are like a direct wire connection, super fast, but actually pretty rare in our system. The vast, vast majority of our connections are chemical synapses. And this is where the real magic happens. The electrical signal gets to the end of the axon and triggers the release of these tiny chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. I want you to think of them like specific keys. They float across that tiny gap and fit into perfectly shaped locks on the next neuron. When they connect, they unlock a new signal, passing the message along. And this chemical step is just so important because it allows for much finer control. You can turn the volume of a signal up or down, something a simple electrical wire just can't do. Okay, so now we know how a single message makes its journey. Pretty cool, right? But let's zoom back out again. How are these billions upon billions of neurons organized into one giant coherent network? Well, the entire human neural system is basically split into two main parts. First up, you have the central neural system, or the CNS for short. This is mission control, the brain and the spinal cord. It's where all the big decisions and major information processing happens. And then you have the peripheral neural system, the PNS. This is the vast network of nerves that acts like the field agents, connecting mission control to every single part of your body. And this peripheral network, it isn't just one big jumble of wires. It's actually really neatly organized into two main divisions. First, you've got the somatic system. This is the one you control, your voluntary movements, like when you decide to pick up a cup of coffee. Then there's the autonomic system, which handles all the stuff that happens, well, automatically. And that system is split again into the sympathetic system, that's your fight or flight response that gets you all amped up, and the parasympathetic system, which is all about rest and relaxation. So we've mapped out the entire network and all its divisions. But now it's time for the final and most important piece of the puzzle. It's time for a tour of headquarters. We're going to explore the central information processing organ, the ultimate command and control system, the brain itself. I mean, just take a second and look at this. This structure is, and this is not an exaggeration, the most complex object we know of in the entire universe. It controls literally everything from our voluntary movements and keeping our balance, all the way to our deepest memories, our emotions, and every single thought. So how do we even begin to make sense of all this complexity? Well, a good way to start is by dividing the brain into three major functional regions: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. First up is the forebrain, which is the largest and most developed part. This is where you'll find the cerebrum, and it's basically the headquarters for all of our higher-level functions. We're talking about the source of our thoughts, our language, our memories, and our ability to process the world around us. In short, it's what makes you, well, you. Then you have the midbrain, which is sandwiched right between the forebrain and the hindbrain. Its job is to act as a crucial relay station. Think of it like a bridge connecting the other two parts. It also plays a really key role in processing sensory information, like what you see and hear, helping to integrate all that data that's flooding into the command center. And finally, we have the hindbrain. The best way to think about this part is as the brain's automatic life support system. It's in charge of all the crucial involuntary functions that thankfully we never have to think about. Things like breathing, our heart rate, posture, and balance. It is the silent, tireless engine that just keeps us alive. So there you have it. We've journeyed all the way from a single electrical spark to the grand, sweeping architecture of the human brain. We're talking about an organ with some 86 billion neurons, that's billion with a B, and each one of those is forming thousands of connections with others, all firing together in this incredibly coordinated symphony. Which leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending question to think about. In this vast, constantly buzzing network, what does it truly mean to be in control of your own mind?